I'm Ethan, I love muzzleloading. I attended an estate sale in my area this weekend and I found a really neat find that I wanted to share with you and talk about some of the details of, because it was kind of a no-name little piece of history. As we were walking around this sale, we found this bundle of ramrods. Inside this little bundle of ramrods for like $6. Eagle-eyed people might spot it, but there's one particular ramrod here that really caught my eye. And that's this one right here. It's 3 feet long or so, maybe a little bit over. But take a look at that and let me know what you think. Real slender, real slim. But as I continue to look at this rod, some really neat details. First, it's small caliber, likely 32. I haven't put a set of mics on it yet. Hickory, and of this bundle of ramrods, I think it's the only one that has some actual age to it. These other ramrods are about 50 caliber. Lines up pretty well with the history of this gentleman that I know. Did some hunting with muzzleloaders in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, but ultimately kind of converted over to archery hunting primarily. This rod, though, like I said, I think is about 32 caliber. And it's old, and it's nice straight-grained hickory, which we can see up here in the handle. What's neat about this, as we inspect this handle, though, is this whole rod looks to be an original mid to late 19th century rod by my estimations. And I believe it to be handmade. Hypothesis going here, I believe it belongs to some kind of small caliber Indiana squirrel or varmint rifle. Percussion, most likely, from 1850s, 60s, 70s, somewhere in that area. But that's all speculation, of course. Back to the rod. This rod is really cute because it's, like I said, I believe to be handmade, hand carved. We can see along the end here just uneven facet where the edges have been knocked down to be more comfortable in the hand. And that's prevalent here at the end and at the kind of muzzle end, you could say, for the rod that would go into the barrel. On top of the handle for the rod, there's actually some chattering, which if you've done any whittling or carving, you know that it's very common. When working something, you're coming across the grain, trying to even up a surface, and you get some chatter with that blade. Some areas here along the grain have been split out. You can assume, possibly as the person was carving this, that grain kind of ran out. Hickory has long, tough fibers that run the course of the grain, which makes it great for ramrods. We can see a little bit of that texture here where it is split. Along with some of the chattering that we see on the end of the handle here, we see similar blade work here on the inside, where we can actually see some concentric, maybe not concentric isn't the word, but some marks here, some chatter, which would be done as somebody worked their carving knife around this face to try to flatten it out and even it out, possibly in the process of working down this rod to get it close enough to match the caliber for their bore. This handle, you can see, isn't even. You know, the rod itself isn't perfectly centered, attributing to that handmade nature, I believe. The rod is very curved. You can see it has quite a bow with it. This could have happened over time, or it could just be that way. And it's kind of aligns with a lot of my thinking on ramrods, that if something has a bit of a bow or curve, I'm not too concerned about it as long as the grain isn't running out. And with something like this, possibly for a small caliber squirrel rifle, as they're commonly referred to, you're not really putting down a lot of force. And if this is, in fact, from the mid to late 19th century, you weren't necessarily loading super tight like we might see today. But look at that bow and that curve and that whole thing. Still just spry, springy as far as rods go. What I really like about this rod, apart from the neat parts of the handle, is the rod itself is just worn smooth. Could be assumed that is from running up and down a bore, rubbing up against the muzzle perhaps, even just running through hand, as I am here, just feeling the texture of that wood and things over time, possibly wearing that down. The last really neat detail of this piece, or of this wiping stick or ramrod, whatever you want to call it, is the actual working end. At the very end, we don't have any threading or anything for a jag. Quite possible this was just a separate wiping stick for somebody's small caliber game rifle. And I say wiping stick because of the end that we have on this rod. On close examination here, we can see that there are some circular holes in the side of this area that has been carved out, of this cavity we have here on the end. That leads me to believe that this area was first drilled, much like we would see in a patch box, and then cleaned out with a knife or chisel. Because we have some of those remnants of those holes down here in this end, and the diameter of those holes is the same as the diameter of the hole or the curvature we have at the end of the wiping. So one drill bit looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 holes. But what we don't know is how far back this goes, because we have some fairly old wrapping around the end of this wiping stick here, where possibly this very thin wood here in the wiping area has split or been broken and has been patched either in the time period or after to preserve this piece. So while this could be used as a ramrod, this cut slot here makes me believe this is a wiping stick, and the function of that would be to put your cleaning patch, a damp patch, much like we would use today, or a rag of some kind, through this slot cut in the rod, and then it would be inserted into the bore and ran up and down the barrel to clean fouling after hunting or shooting. I think it could take a little bit of abuse as a ramrod, and I think I've used ramrod quite a bit here, but wiping stick I think is a much more appropriate term for this piece. These sidewalls are very thin, and if you had a real loose load, I think that you could load with this piece, but I think this is the kind of thing where you would go out hunting with and loading with the ramrod in the ramrod pipes underneath your barrel, and you would come home and to your shop or your home and clean with this rod in particular, much like we would do today. Not very exciting video, but it's just a neat little piece of history I wanted to share with you, quite possibly from the area I've grown up in. I don't know how possible it is that they hunted the same woods that I hunt or tread in the same ground that I tread on, but a neat little estate sale find. It's not necessarily as cool as finding an original rifle from the area, but just a neat little item. You know, you can see the hand marks, you can see how it was made, you can see how it was used. Just a neat piece, and I hope that you've enjoyed taking a look at this with me. Once again, I'm Ethan. I love muzzleloading. Thank you so much for watching, and if you'd like to learn more about this or anything else related to muzzleloading, you can visit ilovemuzzleloading.com. Thanks again. We'll catch you next time.
I love watching all this.